It's okay with you if we stayed in Iraq for 100 years. I mean, that requires some explanation.
It requires some explanation because I had a town hall meeting. We go back and forth. There was a man there who was very well informed about Iraq and firmly disagreed with me, and we had this exchange. He said, how long do we have to stay there?
President Bush has talked about our staying in Iraq for 50 years.
Maybe 100.
We've been
in South Korea. We've been in Japan for 60 years. We've been in South Korea for 50 years or so. That'd be fine with me.
Does not mean as soon as order is restored to Haiti. It doesn't mean as soon as democracy is flourishing in Haiti. It doesn't mean as soon as we have established a viable nation in Haiti. As soon as possible means as soon as we can get out of Haiti without losing any American lives.
That requires some explanation.
You can't discuss energy without discussing our foreign policy. Why do we go to the Middle East? You know that oil is very important about the Middle East and why we're there. Why did our government, help overthrow Mossadegh in 1953? It had to do with oil. So our foreign policy is designed to protect our oil interests.
Americans are concerned if we're there for 100 years or 1,000 years or 10,000 years. What they care about is the sacrifice of our most precious treasure, and that's American blood.
The president ran on a program of a humble foreign policy, no nation building and no policing of the world, and he changed his tune. And now we are fighting a war, and our foreign operations around the world to maintain our empire is now approaching $1 trillion a year. That's where the money's going, and that's where it has to be cut so we can take care of education and medical cares that are needed here in this country.
Hey there, boys and girls, it's time to play Deliberate Manipulation or Just Bad Conspiracy Theory. This time around, we take a look at CNN.com with its Democratic scorecard. Never mind that it's only January 17th and Giuliani has already received one delegate from the state of Maine. The rest of the candidates will just simply have to wait another 2 weeks when Maine actually has its primary to find out how they will do. Instead, we'll take a look at the carefully chosen CNN pictures that represent the Republican candidates. If you take a quick look, you'll notice there's one major difference. All the candidates are smiling, except for Ron Paul. Yes, that's right. It seems Ron Paul's been left out of the joke trying to figure out what's so funny. So here it is, kids. Is this an accident? Did CNN just simply not have any pictures of Ron Paul smiling? Or a deliberate manipulation on the part of our media keepers? You decide.
So even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
If you want to look for discrimination, it's in the judicial system. 14% of the inner city blacks commit drug crime. 67% of blacks are in prison. That's discrimination. That's the judicial code that I am attacking, and that is not racism. What I defend is the principle of libertarianism, where we never see people who belong to a group, and every individual is defended and protected because they're important in an individual, not because of their color of skin, but of their character. So I am the anti-racist because I am the only candidate, Republican or Democrat, who would protect the minority against these vicious drug laws.
I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a
me see if I get this right. We need to borrow $10 billion from China, and then we give it to Musharraf, who's a military dictator who overthrew an elected government, and then we go to war, we lose all these lives promoting democracy in Iraq. I mean, what's going on here?
I've chosen to preach about the war today because I agree with Dante that the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who in a period of moral crisis maintain their neutrality. There comes a time when silence is betrayal. The truth of these words is beyond doubt, but the mission to which they call us is the most difficult one. With this faith, we will be able to speed up the day when all over the world we will be able to join hands, singing the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
This is an emergency message from the Ron Paul supporters to all Michigan Democrats. Due to the decision made by the leadership of the Democratic Party, Michigan will be stripped of all its delegates. This will ultimately mute your voice, render your vote null and void, and will remove you from any say in this very important election primary. We, as Ron Paul supporters, implore you to make your voice count. Vote Ron Paul on Tuesday, January 15th during the Michigan primary and help bring the troops home. Ron Paul is a fighter for civil liberties for all Americans, voted against the war in Iraq, voted against the Patriot Act, and wants to completely remove the federal income tax by reducing the size of federal government. Again, if you had planned on voting for a Democrat in the Michigan primary, your vote will not count due to party rules. Make your voice count. Vote Ron Paul.
Ron Paul is an honest, humble, genuine man.
Ron Paul is the most important candidate that I've ever had a chance to vote for in my life.
I've been a registered Democrat since I was 18 years old.
People from every segment of society want to be free.
It is a message of freedom that has drawn us to Ron Paul. Our founding fathers established that we would be able to worship and raise our children, educate our children as we wish.
Dr. Ron Paul is an OBGYN physician who has delivered over 4,000 babies, but not once did he perform an abortion.
In 1983, Ron Paul predicted the 1987 recession 4 years before it happened. In South Carolina, at the debate, he announced that we're going into a recession.
It's interesting that Dr. Ron Paul has received more financial contributions from military personnel, active and retired, than any other presidential candidate from either party.
My mama and daddy are voting for Ron Paul.
Hi, I'm Pastor Chuck Baldwin. Most candidates like to talk about their faith, but only Congressman Ron Paul has a legendary 20-year record that Christians can trust. He's also introduced the We the People Act to remove power from activist judges. He proposed the Family Education Freedom Act to enable homeschoolers independence. And he introduced the Sanctity of Life Act to define life as beginning at conception. So enough talking about faith. As for me and my house, we support Ron Paul for president.
Paid for by Citizens for Smaller Government.